Lukey, got a really great show for us today, yes? All about hidden metal, yes? And what could you do about this? Uh, First, of course, like for everybody, I mean, of course, it's not possible to get your minerals from licking rocks, is it? No. And you can't just grind minerals up, right? And put that into flour because that's iron. No, you can't. And you can't just grind rocks up, right? Because it tastes salty. No, you can't. That is a bit stupid. Nobody's going to grind rocks, right? And give that to your baby. Absolutely not. You're supposed to only have something that's ecological. And there's a big difference between a metal as an atom. That's right. Let's talk about iron. What's the difference between iron from, licking something that's metal, right? That's iron, okay, and getting something from it, versus iron from a rose petal. Big difference, I'm telling you, right? One is enzymatically linked and the other is enzymatically resistant. So we're going to be talking a little bit about this today. What about the question do you think you might have anemia? Yes? If you look under your eyelid and it looks a bit pale, obviously, and you've got anemia. Anyway, this podcast really is for you because anemia, which is really a red blood corpuscle disorder, funny how it always wants to say that red blood is a cell. That's wrong. It's not. So why keep, the stupid errors that are going on just being repeated? And don't tell me that that's not the condition that most people are under. Yes, they are. Because have you ever heard that your red blood cell is not a cell? No, okay. No, your red blood corpuscle is not a cell. It's a red blood corpuscle. So it's a red blood corpuscle disorder. That's what anemia is. And what's going on where that is? If somebody's got anemia anyway, sometimes you're going to feel a bit of nausea, a bit of vomitedness, maybe abdominal pain, certainly probably diarrhea and headache, fever, chills, and typically somebody's got a little bit of a metallic taste where things are. All sort of sufferness where confusion would be an altered mental status. You've got all sorts of things where short-term memory loss is existed. And these are things that all can get healed up with a little methylation and hydrolysis from having some honey, why don't you? Unpasteurized, and some lemon. So it's really about what's going on today. You're looking at animals. Somebody points at them and gives them some sort of shock, which that's personally just awful, right? But opening an umbrella and then the goats fall over, or you're seeing signs of dementia and seizure and degrees of mutism as well, where parts of the brain go to sleep, sort of things like sleepwalking or something. So it's a real lacked vital life colloidal terrain, and where your intestine is, where one element can be transmutated into another. And that's what happens where the intestine is. Otherwise, a certain fate could exist, of course, and symptoms where you've got way too much aluminium oxide in your body because of the fallout from the sky. Ever thought about any of that? Why not? Well, you put it up there. What do you think? Is that just not bothered to come down? And there's got 10% more, of that substance sort of blocking all the light out, apparently. Is that right? And so what about neurologically confused conditions and memory loss and the hormone, your D hormone, and having deficiencies where that is? You don't think that that's all part of anemia? And magnesium, where is it? It's pretty scarce. Silica, where's that? Pretty scarce. And then bone doesn't keep its flexibility or strength, and a weakness and pain and anemia. These are all sort of symptoms of things, isn't it? But if you could think about like respiratory condition and cough and shortness of breath and the inhalation of aluminium dust, you've got some really severe cases of seizures and things. So it should be important that you could listen up where this show is. And what's important that you could look at, and if you could think about the approximate distribution of sort of where a burden is of the aluminium is the bones can absorb maybe 60% of that, lungs 25%, muscles 10%, liver 3%. You see, you've got tissue which is more sensitive to draw that to itself. So aluminium distribution where the body is can be being held where the liver is, where copper is being held also, and iron, because you've got an aluminium excess and copper excess and heavy metal condition, which is not orthophilic, meaning it's not orthophilic. What does that mean? It means it doesn't have any permittivity. Sorry. That means it can pass a charge on and hold a charge. Second, because you need carbon to have that. Second, it doesn't have amphoterics, meaning within itself it has a capacity to be either a north negative or a south positive or a neutral, to be able to pass through everything, to be osmolytic, to get down into the pore of a nucleus, let's say. And so then you've got amphiphilics, which is ability to be able to be mixed with oil and water. And so this is what's orthophilic. It means it's straight with nature and it's enzymatically linked. Okay. And so look at a pebble and see how it's rounded over by nature and the water, how nice. Or look at just something really ragged, and now you're seeing something which is a mineral, which has come as an element and it's passed through life. And these are the only types of atoms that you and I can have, actually. But copper and titanium and boron I could think of, typically, these are all being eliminated through the skin, sweated out, and then hair and nail, which is excretory tissue. And then you could see that being excreted where you've got body fluids and things, including the kidney. So whatever is retained is accumulated over time where the tissue is and so liver cells specifically, like the hepatocyte, and you can exclude the Kupffer cells, but aluminium really is stored in these lysosomes, and they're tiny little organelle which are got fats, lipids that they're made of, and it's a potential for accumulated toxicity where under normal circumstances the kidney's really got a good effective ability to excrete. And where you've got low levels of albumin, and this is what's going on today, and you've got high levels of aluminium. And so you've got something not being transported or excreted, and because you need albumin to excrete that, it has to carry it. It has to be clathrated where the body is. So exposure where it's really very high, typically, where most people are consuming dead salt, for instance, same thing. And so you've got chronic types of conditions where the kidney is, and those are receiving sort of contaminated fluids and that, and where you've got nutritional exposure, you've got metals that accumulate, and you've got this all leading to a toxicity of several organs, including the liver in this podcast. So aluminum accumulation where the liver is really causes oxidative stress, causes liver dysfunction and tissue injury. So it's most significant, of course, what health effect is going on. It typically is manifested where the bone and the central nervous system is. If you think about aluminum oxide toxicity and what that accumulation is as a fallout from the sky, isn't that just the same fate that the trees are befalling? I'm going to ask you, do you have a feeling about that? If it's wiping out the trees and the trees are all, got way more aluminium in it that they should have, and you can see all sorts of infestation going on and things because of it. So is that just a criminal banking cartel of a one world order that's just sprayed all of that, and it's sort of like an apple that apparently just falls from the sky? But it's the dust that's from, coal burning. And these have their own atoms. They burn and ignite. And aluminium burns much hotter. And the body heats fast where that's in it, and you're under a magnetic field. And so because it's non-orthophilic, it's not ecological. What's not ecological cannot be supported. Okay? Aluminum toxicity and anemia. And aluminum really is known to cause specific types of anemia, of course. You've got microcytic sorts of hyperproliferative types of anemia, and it's an inhibition of various sort of blood synthesis, like the heme synthesis. And can say that aluminium doesn't interfere with that enzyme. It sure does. Not supposed to be there. So if you're looking at how involved where this heme synthesis is, you've got non-protein parts of the hemoglobin that contain iron, of course, and you've got blood formation, and otherwise you've got really a dyshomeostasis. Aluminium competes for iron and the binding for transferrin, and that's the protein responsible for transporting iron in the blood. And we're talking about, orthophilic iron, not, something that's just mined and shook and put into the flour or something. So it all otherwise would have led, of course, to some increased level. And what the free intracellular sorts of iron is, and the cause of oxidative stress, and that could be prevented where the body is. And so it's doing things to help manage everything for you, yet proper storage where iron ferritin is, as it should be in its elemental state versus no, it's not. It's really in a toxic, non-orthophilic state, meaning it's not state with nature. So the disruption of iron atom unavailable, and so erythropoiesis, which is the study of blood formation, it doesn't occur in the bone marrow. It occurs in your intestine and in your lung, and it occurs from fat cell being back, reverse differentiated back into a red blood corpuscle. So the red blood corpuscle, where aluminium accumulation could have been, a morphology certainly is for that, and it's an abnormal sort of shape it has afterward. So aluminum toxicity causes anemia itself, and it's a primary mechanism involving iron dyshomeostasis and the inhibition of hemoglobin synthesis. So where you've got that hormone that's called vitamin D, and it's really no longer present where you've got a lot of aluminium oxide and copper and iron. If you listen to other podcasts, you'll hear about this. So it's like molecule like tungsten, and is that sort of in a foreign language something toxic? But you've got looking at steroid hormone, and it's as soon as possible someone should see that magnesium certainly is a cofactor where enzymes are involved in hormone, and estrogen and testosterone, all of those are really regulated and balanced ever more. Where you do have magnesium and where you don't, it's sort of like, what's going on there? It's not properly being synthesized. Magnesium is so important because it's a cofactor that's making quite a few hormones, and really notably what's called vitamin D, which is hormone. It's a hormone. Okay, so technically, what is a prohormone? Meaning it's really a category that's acting perhaps like a hormone. It's really looking at the concentration of magnesium and zinc and significantly seeing that's decreased. It doesn't exist. And so you're really looking into job cell rejuvenation to see, what can you do about this? But it's the severity of where liver is and its capacity to be able to help you. And it's really negative correlated where you've got, not proper zinc level, or you've got, non-oxalophilic zinc. So looking at this sort of more finely, it's positively sort of correlated where copper level is and indicating a disruption where normal mineral balance is supposed to be. So the human liver really is disruption to the ease that ordinarily is felt where stone formation is in the sinusoid areas and then in the bladder and in the pancreas. And it's a general non-life food dietary type of condition which would have gone on that correlates even more with heavy metal toxicity because of the type of food that's been consumed. It's sort of really absorbing a lot of this, putting it into this flesh, and then it's vacuuming it up and storing it, and then people are consuming it, you see. So a hematopoietic substance like an iron atom, it really is just the same. It's got a number 26 in it all the way through itself. But the big thing is that which has been conditioned by nature as an element is enzymatically linked and enzymatically active, whereas a metal atom of iron just from itself there like that, mind doesn't have that whatsoever, not the same. So a red blood corpuscle really, by aggregating, fusing and differentiating, can form in the intestine, in the large cell lamina propria, and then also in the lung, where in the submucosa. And so where double spore is assembled, it comes to be in an equal amount of a trace element of each of these substances we're supposed to have. Otherwise, you've got some sort of volatility going on. Magnesium, of course, is very involved in detoxification and also enzyme systems and things. And otherwise, copper as a heavier metal is a toxin where that is. So if we look at, of course, something which is like, I guess, organic, like snake venom, you've got, mineral in there. But the mineral is in an orthophilic state, but the copy of what those minerals will be can have an effect, but then not be cleared away properly. So snake venom really can be healed up. You could use niacinamide-like sort of compound, and tobacco is an example. So Virginia snakeroot is another, red fireberry, Oregon graperoot, and hops and neem. These are things which are in the digest aid. So these are things which are designed because it's got 3 very important amino acids that's missing to assist to help where this is, and it's all cold processed and micronized and put onto sphingosine and ceramide, which are tiny little platforms which absorbs this across the tongue. So it's sort of 6th generation product. And so what goes on where somebody's neutralizing that venom, and the alleviation of the symptom is pretty fantastic. So ribosome and life colloid really pretty much is destroyed by flesh eating and bean eating and cooked and dead food. And so you're really looking at what could have been inhibiting, proper function. Yes. And is that just dead food? And where you don't have any zeta potential, and you've got RNA helicases, and where you've got impairing sorts of ribosome and a biogenesis and protein translation, you've got toxin that blocks all of that from happening. So protein folding, that's kind of what gets blocked. And so polymers bind and aggregate, fuse and differentiate, but they don't really fold proper. And so this is a bit of a problem. The molecular chaperone, which is essential for protein foldedness, could be starting to have been misfolded by, element that got in there that really got an add-on and got duplicated itself, but it doesn't fit into the body properly. So protein aggregation and the neurotoxicity which comes from that, you've got these poly types of polymer protein foldedness, and you've got ceramide and heat, which potentially sort of comes to cause those things to become neurotoxic, and that causes an aggregation of tissue and cellular compartment and nucleus, and it causes a disruption of cellular function. So arginine, the amino acid, and proline are the primary sort of substances found in venom and toxin from a snake. And arginine and proline are amino acids found in meat in abundance and bean in abundance, and it's way beyond what should be. And so it's a source which contains a wide range of those, toxic amino acids. So the flesh of a bird and the fish is toxic beyond belief because it's rich in arginine and proline, and also all of that present in the bone broths and things in particular. And proline and arginine overall where abundance is, and you've got N-glyconeurominic acid, which is a molecule of death, which is laced with that, come from cows, for instance, and otherwise other surfactants that come from fish or birds, same thing, only different sort of surfactant, but not something that we have the ability to break down. And so arginine and proline are brought in a specific sort of a sequence of things and an amount of a ratio of those things in relation to other stuff. You see, this is the protein that's in venom, like snake venom. So you've got, if you look into this, you'll see left bending light, like amino acid, good. That's natural. Oxidases, and flavoproteins, which are particular components of venom. That's right, and contribute to sort of a toxicity where the body is. So you're going to say that, let's see, phospholipase isn't going to get disturbed. Yes, it does. That enzyme in your body, which you've got excessive phosphate and lipids and things which go on where somebody's eating flesh. You're not going to tell me that enzymes that relate to that aren't major enzymes that elapid sorts of venom don't have. They sure do. They have a diverse pharmacological activity, especially these three-fingered sort of toxins, which are found in high concentrations where the venom is, in the cobra and mamba species. So peptides really are a key component where venom is and toxin, and the amino acid sequence and the variation of that, you see. So it's specific in the sequence of a ratio of amino acid, and everything is given where a toxin is. It's unique where the structure and function of that is, you see. So a virus, you could say, okay, so well, that's RNA, and it's like snake venom. And when you look that up, it just means the same thing, okay. So it's really biologicals or life colloid, which really is non-ecological. And the mixture of those, like 20 to a greater than 100 component of a majority and a greater than 90% of peptide and proteins, and this is what's dominant. So really small amount of life colloids, seemingly inanimate, and then, of course, like where the injectables are, you've got metal atoms put, and copper and cofactors, and numerous enzymes, which really is a poisonous mixture, similar to a snake venom, of course, consisting of a variety of carbohydrate, nucleoside, and amino acid, and lipid, and protein, and peptides. And so you've really got pretty distinct sorts of pleomorphic mutation going on where that is, which we'll talk a little bit about. Maybe we'll get to that in this podcast. But I was just thinking, amino acid excess for proline and arginine, like, yes, we talked about it. It's what's in flesh. And it's a substitute where sequences of a punctuation where DNA is an RNA creating damage epigenetically to where protein would get folded properly, which we're just talking about above a little bit. So the distinct point where mutations occur in DNA sequence, it really is the cause of single amino acid substitutes. And so what have you got? Substitutes where arginine is to proline conversions. And that doesn't do too good in our body. That's not something which we should have in our body. So looking at toxic conditions where excessive amino acid is, that's really not orthophilic for us, like what you're consuming where flesh or bean is. That's the cause of quite a unique disruption to the ease that we ordinarily want to have, because you've got these apolipoprotein and you've got arginine and proline molecule causing lipoprotein glomerulopathy, really. You've got really large clumps of everything can clump together and misshaped. So what the focus is, if you're a neurologist, really, you're going to notice that there's amino acid that makes neurotransmitter, and that's something which carries micromineral. Apart from phenylalanine and tryptophan and tyrosine and histidine, you've got other sort of amino acid that contains like histidine, and these all have an aromatic ring structure. Okay, so these are very important because you've really got this to be able to transport mineral in your body. Okay, so these ligands, like we just talked about, are aromatic, and these, like histidine, is an aromatic, and it's a group where a basic amino acid is that's slightly got a bit of a side chain where that is. So coming to look where spikes are, where a membrane is, where the tissue is, excessive homocysteine, for instance, is going to cause spike protein. It's going to cause membranes to spike. So this is an example of methionine, which we shouldn't really be having much of at all, where you're getting excessive amounts where you eat bean or flesh. You're going to have excessive methionine, and that breaks down into homocysteine. And when homocysteine can't be broken down properly because you don't really have any L-cyliverase L-planetarium, which is proteolytic life colloid in the intestine, it just is corrosive. And so it's an analog of a protein because it doesn't have nitrogen in it, but homocysteine is so disruptive and it increases the potential across the mitochondrial membrane and things of life colloid. It's really disruptive, and it damages the endothelial cells as well. So homocysteine is the cause of lipoprotein A to get laid down inside the arteries and plaque, and it does that to help protect, because homocysteine that's not broken down properly is really corrosive to the endothelial cells, the cells that line the passageways. So spiked cellular membrane, or can be seen where the red blood corpuscle is, and it's really obvious how come you haven't looked at the blood under the microscope? So looking at inflammation and where oxidation is, there's an interference with nitric oxide, which is the substances which causes the blood vessels to open up and relax and everything. So as an altered calcium balance, homocysteine really can do this of itself and increases intracellular calcium and various cellular process, and it triggers the damaging pathways, you see. So, somebody has to clear up that toxin, but we shouldn't be letting toxin in like what that is. So disruptiveness of where nitric oxide production is really interferes with normal production of that, and this is now no longer having a substance to cause blood vessels to be relaxed and open and cause things to flow, so you've got proper microcirculation. So you've got an oxidative type of capacity, and where north negative is just robbed from the body, and double layer lipid membrane all start to get pinched and extrude their content, so it's no longer sort of got a sealedness, you see, and those spikes all come off the membrane of red blood corpuscle and things. So glycoprotein forms a really distinctive sort of club-shaped types of projections and spikes and double spore, life colloid, papilloma types of conditions that stick out from the life colloidal spore envelope and giving it a sort of a non-ecological oxidant type of characteristic, sort of like a crown around itself, which is the corona. And our corona should really have a nice amount of rhodium, osmium, and ruthenium around it and sort of leave a nice glow. Otherwise, red blood corpuscles just look like ghosts. Like something has just disappeared, it's popped, and whatever was there is gone. It's sort of like, disappeared before your very eyes, and just you're only looking at a ghost there. So niacinamide and niacin are really great efficacy, where you've got various sorts of protein injectables that come along and that were designed. And angiotensin is a substance that really converts these enzyme ACE receptors and causes histamine to be released. Otherwise, it's protected and it's protected against inflammation. But otherwise, no, without niacinamide, where the receptors are, you've got a lot more spike protein effect and everything. So what protects really against that spike protein and stopping all the dead food, of course, and applying life food nutrition and job cell rejuvenation? They're really looking into product that's existed. They're all whole food vitamin mineral complexes that are designed to convert spike protein and reduce the effect of that would have on receptors. And it's sort of mediating the endothelial response, which are the cells which line the passageways of yourself. So otherwise, you've got these receptors, these ACE2 receptors, which, as we were talking about, response is your response to inflammation, where that is. And so for the lungs and the pulmonary condition and the intestine and meninges of the brain and things, we've got these ACE2 modulated types of innate immunity that assist to help manage everything. And this is influenced by the composition of gut life colloid. So otherwise, somebody could have diarrhea, they've got intestinal inflammation, and very dilute drops of like some of the Job formula, or having Gouda, for instance, has natural pacifier in it that's designed to protect the body and clear up all of the artifact that causes spike protein. So you could see small amounts of diluted formula where it goes into the plasma, and suddenly you could see all of these artifacts dissolved. So herbal phytonutrient has got its zeta potential, meaning it really has the ability to be able to pass through a body and not be attracted to the body. And that can only be where you haven't had any heat. You have to have cold processed and stereoscopic nutrient, the same as what you've got in nature. So, just like a small amount of tobacco water, for instance, taken, dissolved, it can dissolve all the synthetic artifact where the blood is. And so this enhances remyelinization. Niacin, which is there, can boost the central nervous system's ability to remyelinate and restore the protective sheath that should be around nerve. You've got the hormone D, which is crucial in modulating the innate adaptive sort of immune response that we've been talking about. And you've got a capacity to be able to heal anemia. And so life food really does assist this. Job cell rejuvenation does. You could be clearing away all the toxin and reducing artifact, and so your blood becomes clean, and you really are having a proper cell rejuvenation. And so it's regulating these ACE2 receptor activity. You could see that when you're looking at things, the hydrogel that was used is full of these nanographene oxide and heavy metal toxin, and it's a step that you or I could stop where cell damage is, get what's dependent upon the property where that is on all these nanoparticle, non-ecological total, and what that does is to lead to cell death, apoptosis, and necrosis. So it's a cause of a genotoxicity and an epigenotoxicity. So hepatotoxicity, that's of the blood, and positively charged lipid nanoparticles that are causing what that is. And it's not meant to be anything that could be in the body per se. And an inflammatory response where that is going on where the liver is. So is people going to say that some heavy metal is better off because it's put into this cage? But this is really disastrous overall, and heavy metals that would be used for tracing and things, are still being used to trace. These cages, you don't think that in fact that this is also problematic. So the lipid nanoparticle that is synthetic, that surrounds those atoms, it really is the delivery system that's positively charged and acidic. And in an acidic environment, it dissolves more. So it's part of hydrogen dependent, and it's what efficiency could exist, as something which is non-ecological, but this is describing what would go on more or less where the body is natural, where you've got natural nanolipid particle. So overall inflammatory effect, really, where the immune system is, you've got these synthetic particles, and they're designed, honest to God, not in a manner that's not going to cause inflammation of the ACE receptor, just like a snake venom. And then where it's an acidic effect and inflammation, the functional mechanism of delivering that toxin, its payload. And so the chemical instability where messenger RNA is, it's really highly susceptible to hydrolysis under the second sense of that. And all of these phosphodiester sort of bonds. And oxidation, where you look into the physiology of this, you're going to see an aqueous environment, meaning a water or liquid environment, and how does temperature affect this? Oh, yeah. It renders them messenger RNA untranslatable after this and inactive, and aldehydes are all derived from this, have an oxidativeness and hydrolysis. So you've got cationic types of lipid there, and they covalently bind to messenger RNA and compromise the integrity of where any storage would be. So these lipid nanoparticle components, ionizable lipid, phospholipid, and cholesterol, all degrade. And PEG lipids, you see, they all degrade, whether in a life colloidal environment, and certain after injection. So the oxidativeness where that is, it's not kept and can't be and couldn't be like, kept cold in vats, but no. Ionizable types of lipid and ester linkages start to become to be, and what's designed metabolic comes to be more cleavable and breaks down, and it rapidly does, of course, in the body, and it reduces it to toxicity. So it's an unsaturated lipid tails that are particularly prone to oxidation, and the effects of the membrane integrity and stability is sort of really looking at taking a batch that somebody made and then turning it into a huge, large vat and sizing. And so where batch size goes up, pleomorphing goes on as well, and you no longer are keeping a colloid proper, and so you've got, degrees of strength and diluted parts of what that is, so it's not the same. But if you look into this, you could see a Zempic sort of molecule at that semi-glutide that is a drug, and it's really derived from looking and studying, I guess, venom and saliva component of snakes' venom, and a primary composer of proteins that are large in enzyme, and especially these phospholipases, which have a truly effect on these ACE2 receptors. And the metal proteases, you see, enzymes metalloid, and these three-fingered toxins that we were talking about. So larger molecules generally too big to be absorbed through the skin, but bam, went through the skin, I guess, with a needle. Shouldn't and wouldn't go through a gut lining proper, but injected, wow, yeah, straight into the bloodstream and the muscle and what have you. So the diverse effect of that can be left and not broken down, sort of like got some forever molecules where that is neurotoxicity and hemorrhaging and tissue necrosis. Because why? Because it's not ecological, can't be defended. So what the amino acid sequence of similarity is to a snake venom shouldn't be anything that's anywhere near a body. Because why? Well, because what would be the reason why you just give everybody a snake venom? Would some people just be, not able to manage that? Where venom is, of course, in healthy individuals, you've got enzymes that are present and otherwise low levels of enzyme. And what you've got to have to be able to clear up the inflammation of a non-ecological life colloid and material that sort of got deposited. So it really shreds the cell membrane and attacks organs, and it leads to organ failure and death. It's sort of an overexpressed severe sort of shared enzyme of a degree of family of secreted phospholipases, and so these are things which can be found in the injectables and sort of like modeled on things, which is like enzyme that's found in like a rattlesnake. Yeah. So the amino acid sequence similarity, where shots were designed, sort of thing, those all had that things which had spiked, and protein and snake venom sort of neurotoxin, which are similar. And so, somebody's going to say that whatever is given a name of something which is a toxin, and so somebody could say that's a virus. It's a toxin, and it binds to nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. And so it's really, this is a neurotransmitter that connects your brain and nerve to your body and muscle. And so a pathophysiological mechanism underlies that constellation. You've got a whole symptom of characterized sort of heavy metal, sporulative types of amino acid and phosphorus and lipid toxin. And this is truly just inflammation overload, okay? So what guards against this, of course, like we've talked about, is nicotinic nutrient, B3 and nicotinic acetylcholine receptor. And these act toward the body and give you a response that's assist to help you clear up what ordinarily would be quite a severe acute respiratory type of syndrome otherwise, an epithelial mucus inflammation that's triggered the receptor, and a substrate from phytonutrient that's really capable of dissolving those synthetic artifacts. So I think that, the new asbestos on the block is graphene oxide. Because why? Well, because isn't that being used to filter fine substrate where, the big pharma is today, things are all being made, and is graphene oxide not part of the filters and things, and a certain amount of that apparently gets into everything, where it would have in the past been, asbestos. But so today you've got graphene oxide, which acts the same. It's very sharp, sharded. It's really used to create components like antennas that can self-assemble, and you've got a 2.4 gigahertz Bluetooth frequency that can come off that because it's highly, highly, highly conductive. So should anybody be going in there, these huge magnetic, energetic kind of conditions where you've got a lot of graphene where the body is? Maybe not, because it's so conductive, and also all the metals. So it's really a found self that's assembled and emitting a Bluetooth signal, of course, and that signal requires a power source and a radio frequency circuit and transmitter to generate that, to modulate a signal that's emitted. And so when you're looking at this, you're seeing these componentry, and you just do a search for image, and you can see, what comes up where all of that is. But what infectedness, where tissue damage is an introducedness of a foreign, non-sterile types of non-orthophilic material which self-assembles itself into an antenna and these circuits and things to cause the body then to be used as an antenna and emitting signal itself and giving what's your DNA sequences and things. So a signal attenuation where the human tissue is sort of primarily water, significantly attenuated, sort of a standard of like a 2.4 gigahertz Bluetooth signal, making a reliable communication not too difficult really. But in fact, that's what's being done. Specialized antennas are designed, self-assembled, and powered up by the body. And so it's a developed condition of a self-assembled nanoscale and has a density of a certain amount of charge. And there you've got a rectifier, good, that picks up this from an antenna and circuitry. And voila, you've got life colloid film with self-assembled and circuitry that effective sort of can give you a 2.4 gigahertz frequency, which is used for what? Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, okay. So it's simple materials is close by that disperse and are sprayed into a liquid, and in a liquid medium, for instance, you could see self-assembled, flexible types of and rigid structure that create antenna and circuitry. So signal generation that's specific, where Bluetooth requires sort of self-assembled functioning electronic circuitry where the body is, and that includes sort of these nanobots, sort of oscillator and modulator and power source, you see? Yes? So the field where this is as a structure that radiates information, it serves as a passive sort of antenna to radiate signal. It doesn't generate the signal itself. Okay. So the 2.5 gigahertz frequency range is a common operating frequency, certainly for graphene-based antenna and rectifying circuit. And particularly the application you could think of in Wi-Fi and Internet and the Internet of Things, you've got sensors and wireless energy harvesting. So the rectifying circuits that really function efficiently is a 2.45 gigahertz radio frequency where energy is converted into DC power, and integrated rectangular sorts of systems all operate more than 2.5 gigahertz and harvest ambient energy from the body. Microwave also, that's being picked up by your antenna of your body, Wi-Fi networks also. And this all is picked up by graphene assembled film and conductive element that's self-assembled and oxides. And so it's a fabricated method that involves different frequencies, so a kilohertz to a megahertz range, and is used to align and manipulate the liquid crystal and processing steps and things. And so the resulting operation is a frequency that's a final assembled device, which typically is giving you a gigahertz range, yeah? And so it's a unique sort of property of graphene which can do that. And it's really got a high-frequency application where microwave and a terahertz sort of spectrum is. But you could imagine that the operating at a terahertz frequency is really, could be said that, hey, maybe that's not too current, but wow. You're looking at a terahertz range, typically 0.1 to 10 terahertz, and where future wireless communication standards are like 6G. And so higher data rate where terabytes are per second. So terahertz frequency is really, terahertz range sits between a microwave and like a infrared frequency. So it offers a sort of a vast amount of available bandwidth that exists for information, you see, and this is like 6G, and where your body's been considered to be used as an antenna. And so what's explaining the microcircuitry, which we've talked about, named above, the magnetic experience of noting sort of how, let's say, a spoon shouldn't be sticking to you, where the vaccine was, but like, have you seen and heard that? Self-assembled graphene oxide sort of fabricatedness engages unique frequencies of kilohertz and megahertz. And as I said, it's used for aligning things. So you've got operational frequency that a self-assembled device typically sort of like, as we said, in the gigahertz range. So resonant frequencies of graphene undergo sort of harmonic oscillations. And you've got an ohm of resistance where zero is equivalent to about 20.63 megahertz. So it's a consistent experimental measurement of a resonant frequency of about 90.8 megahertz. The antenna and rectifier circuits it's metered, don't tell me that can't be done in ears. It sure is. Just talking about the science behind that. So adding the external antenna and relativeness, it's very simple, you see. So what's the dangers, of course, of all of that? It's really chemicals. You've got these PFASs, which are like, you can find that in flea and tick sort of sprays and insecticide. And mosquito control, you've got these polyfluorinated, aromatic sort of carbonated compounds, and 3,500 parts per trillion, significantly higher, could be where the EPA is, where drinking water would be, and advisory might be just a limit of only maybe 70 parts per trillion. But that's just like where the lowest amount of that is. So you've got substance already that's pretty much like 70 parts per trillion, let's say, all right throughout nature. This is really terrible. 3 chemicals, of course, can be found, and those are all chemicals made pretty much from one group of people that's contaminated where the whole earth is. So what's being breathed, where the body is, and what comes into the skin, and what goes where the contact of your body is. You've got Teflon pans. We're talking about what's breathed in like that can just knock over canary. Yes? Teflon pans heated up. That's smoke. It releases extremely harmful toxins, just the same as it's coming out of your dryer where you're using these, fragrance, synthetic fragrance and things. The insecticides have these PFASs compounds. What's intentionally added, where any active ingredient is into fragrance, oh my God, isn't disclosed and things. You've got chemicals like these PFASs in laundry product, polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFASs, and you've got polyfluorocationic sort of acid, that's PFOAs and things. Okay, so we're going to get into too much science there. But what historically is being used for laundry detergents and things like that, these are these forever chemicals. Ooh. So, if somebody looks on the certification, they could see the product is verified to be Mora Green Seal certified, and that these substances are all banned and not found in these products, but especially disinfectants in industrial setting and heavy chemicals that's used in fragrance can have these molecules where that is, and they can't be broken down. So what happens where certain amount of substances, injectables, where swab is and things in infection, you've got amyloid plaque getting laid down, amyloid plaque, and you've got all this plaque forming where the brain is and things. There's misfolded proper types of plaque which causes clots and increasing the levels of that. And so this abnormal beta amyloid sort of protein that is present, that the body produces where it's under attack from all of these synthetic toxins and things, it's really the cause of Alzheimer's. And you could see that injectables and the swabs and hydrogel and spike protein and all of these things really are beta aggregates where brain tissue is and contribute really to neurological symptoms that's observed where the injectables are. So, coming to be complete a little bit for our podcast, could you just imagine like what happens to these injectables where you're making the large vats like what we were talking about? The pleomorphism that goes on where the larger vat is, you've got protein unfoldedness and aggregated, you've got particle size change, you've got pleomorphism, which is generally relating to the variability of shapes all of a sudden and the size where things are. So life colloidal double slow sort of double spore go on and they aggregate, fuse and differentiate into RNA and also DNA as well. This is going to be not good because that's going to be, if it's injected, causing a clot. So life colloid that even has RNA pieces come together to make DNA, and now you've got like a life colloid that's truly toxic itself. And so changes where the physical life colloid level is to create its own excrement then inside your body, and it's a chemical magneton spore and nanoparticle. So protein unfolding and aggregated particle size changes, and pleomorphism really relates to that variability and the size and of the cells and everything. And so when something is compounded in alchemy, you really could be blind to that the idea that something is sterile when it's not sterile, it's turbid, pasteurized. You've got to look into that. So toxin that's added where liquid vaccines are and manufactured on large scale in vats, nobody's going to say that pleomorphic changes didn't occur where the toxin physical properties is lacking. You've got lacked proper colloidal conditioning, you see, and you've just simply got toxic condition inside these nanolipids, which is a carrier piggybacking interior. You've got nanotoxin, and it's just released where it is in an acid environment, and you've got these big vats of all of that, and toxic particle, got nanoparticle, lipid nanoparticle, which isn't orthophilic whatsoever, and can't be and doesn't maintain a proper uniform sort of particle size or any crucialness for stability whatsoever, but it's all, non-ecological. So an unnatural processing where anything is like that, and a partial hydrogen variations that really goes across a large vat and chemical degradation, you've really got a hydrolysis and oxidation of the messenger RNA and the life colloid molecule. So it's really simple, okay? You've got an initial injectable prototype and research where things are going on. It doesn't call it a vaccine because it doesn't satisfy the definition of what that is, so it's called a military prototype. So it's got specific conditions which mimic our own human enzyme secretedness, which it triggers, that secretes these phospholipids and affects these ACE2 receptors and things. And that's all what this is, you see that's going on. So look, you've got sequences that's similar to active enzyme where the rattlesnake venom is, and key drivers of mortality where severe injectables and swab tests are, where that material has been deposited where the body is, you see. So where beforehand you had a healthy cell and membrane and things, suddenly you've got multiple organ failure and death, and healthy individuals really, which don't have as much capacity to be able to respond, these are certain that, body's going to be really compromised a lot more. So the mechanism really of harm of the hydrolysis of phospholipid and the cell membrane and lipoprotein really is a process that generates a potent sort of pro-inflammatory lipid mediation. And so what is the result of that? You end up with arachidonic acid, and it's a fatty acid, it's a precursor like eicosanoids and prostaglandin and leukotrienes and thromboxanes And this intensifies the inflammatory response. And the same with all of the omega-3 and omega-6, rancid fats that come from flesh. Same thing. So lysophospholipid, where the molecules are, it could be just come to be more further converted where platelet activation is. So you've got platelet activating factor, which causes everything to start to stick together more, and strong mediator of inflammation where that is. So platelet aggregating factor gets released and it aggregates and causes harm, of course, in the dysregulatedness where conditions of thrombosis and stroke and heart attack, and you've got spontaneous clotting ever more after that. So platelet aggregated factor and easily can be seen where oxidative stress test is on the blood, and after where somebody had an injectable, you've got potent mediation of inflammation contributing to shock asthma type symptoms. So it's an exacerbation of the various types of disease where it really does include neoplasm and neurological sorts of conditions. So platelet aggregating factor coming to be full circle, it really does cause harm and is really responsible for stroke and heart attack and spontaneous clotting. And so you've got potent mediation of inflammation going on where that is, and symptoms of an exacerbated condition of disease. And these are all the things which is targeted by job cell rejuvenation, yes, to turn all of this around. So how about choosing nature? I think this is really important. Otherwise, somebody could be looking a little bit yellow around the gills, a little bit green. How about you've got maybe a bit of excessive heavy metal copper where the liver is? And how about getting back this hormone, this D hormone? So you've got deep skin boils, otherwise, and internal bacteria pustulate below the skin, and all of that sort of is a condition that's caused by copper buildup where the liver is, and the brain and the eyes and the organs, and it really does lead to a lot of other variety of symptoms. Anyway, if you're looking a little bit yellow and a bit of green around the gills, including that yellowing of your skin and eyes and jaundiced, maybe you're fatigued, maybe got an inability to excrete copper normally, and if that's left untreated, the condition just can cause severe sort of organ damage and things that's like that. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast on us. It brings some light to things a little bit more for you. If you'd love to make an appointment, go ahead and have a click to jubdavid.com, and you can look and browse at the site. Anyway, I hope you're really enjoying the day, and we've got some really exciting podcasts coming up, so stay tuned. Love you guys. Catch up to you in a future show.